Welcome everyone to another episode of Exploring Concept Art. Short tutorial this week, just centering around drawing. I may indeed create some more tutorials just based around how to sketch, how to sort of develop your drawing skills, best ways to learn. But I thought I'd just kick things off by just having a play with Photoshop and showing you a few, just a few things to kind of, a few things to do before you sort of get going. Always make sure that you have a decent brush selected. Now, personally, I like to go for, if I just do top click there, I always like to go for a brush 14, and I usually put a dynamic on that. I tend to find that this kind of gives quite an organic feel. It's entirely up to you which one you choose. I just like this because you can see there, you get this, kind of fragmented sort of effect, which kind of simulates graphite or graphene, pencils, or even charcoal. So before you do any kind of drawing, it's always a good idea just to sort of test some of these things out. Just see how they work. You can see there. Play around with opacities. Yep. Take it down. So it's worthwhile, before embarking on doing any kind of concept art, always explore your tools, have mastery over your tools. I tend to kind of stick to one brush, strictly two brushes. One is this brush and another one is the soft brush. I tend to kind of use this for creating hazes and things like that. Always be wary when you choose a soft brush. Make sure these aren't highlighted. Smoothing and shape dynamics. So things like smoke and things like that. And I tend to use the same with the smudge tool. So when I come to the smudge tool, I think I've already got it selected. I'll just take off that smoothing. It automatically puts it on for some reason. And so I'll leave that brush 14, I also use for the smudge tool, and I don't tend to sort of deviate from that. I tend to kind of use the same brushes. There are some people who who really have they have like sort of sets of brushes and things like that, and tend to obsess a little bit over the brushes. I've noticed comments from other tutorials where concept arts work, doing the work, and in the comment section they'll often sort of say, what kind of brush did you use? How did you achieve this? What brush did you use? I think personally, it's coming at it from the wrong end. A paintbrush is a paintbrush. It's a paintbrush, right? You don't necessarily get too many different variations. You get different sizes, that's true, different bristles, but they don't tend to vary. I use traditional materials as well as digital. So I paint with oils and I paint with Photoshop. So I kind of take a bit of a sort of traditional art frame of mind to Photoshop as well. So, and also I think it's just a lot to think about. I'm quite a simplistic creature. I like to kind of keep things simple. I don't want to be thinking about all the various brushes I could use to kind of do a scene. I tend to just decide on the scene that I want to create, and then I create it. I don't tend to obsess too much about the different types of brushes. Sizes, yes, maybe the occasional sort of deviation, but generally, if I just, for example, if I bring up this box here, things like these, I don't bother, stars, leaves, I don't bother. There's a lot of stuff that is really, extraneous. It's unnecessary, unless, of course, there's an occasion for it. There might be something where, for example, you want to create lots of grass. You might choose something like that, for example. And, of course, it would help if I actually put it on the brush and not smudge. Let's come back to that again. There we go. So, you might want to do things like that. Fine. Absolutely fine. You could do that and then work into it, let's make sure I've got dynamics switched on there. And then work into it whichever way you see fit. I just don't tend to work that way, but that's just my personal choice. Yep, my personal choice. Do what works for you. At the end of the day, I'm just sort of talking through how I work, but whatever works for you, you do that. So yeah, so using those kind of combinations of brushes, of just using that brush 14 and the sort of soft brush, you can achieve a lot. Even something like this, it kind of looks like a sort of cloud effect. You can use that. Use it for that kind of thing. Create kind of different types of clouds. So without veering off too much, just coming back to it, this is where you need to be. If you want to kind of follow the route that I go down. So I've got brush presets, 14. This is how I work. Just change that over there. So experiment, try opacities, try the different strengths, have a play around, strokes, just create a page of mess. Yeah, just try different things, try narrowing the brush down. It's doing something funny there. I don't know what's it doing. It's scattering it. It's putting some kind of effect in there. I'm not entirely sure what is changed. You see, these are the joys of doing something live. You get all these things that you can ordinarily edit out, but I'm just doing it live for now. Yeah, I'm not quite sure why it's putting in. It's got a sort of slightly staggered effect on there. I'm not going to fuss too much about it. It's not important, but I'm just curious to know why it's doing it. Not to worry. Yeah, a bit of a mystery that. I don't quite understand why that's doing it, but not to worry, not to worry. So so yeah, have a play around, try the different brushes and smudge. So hopefully that's kind of at least just giving you an idea for starting up. Now if I just get rid of this for a sec, I'm just going to crop this out. There we go, to create another layer. Now in terms of drawing things, you can use reference, draw from reference. That's a very good way of learning how to sketch. So observational drawings, could be drawing your own face or having a mirror. It's quite tricky doing it through Photoshop. If you're learning to draw for the first time, I'd advise you using pencils just to kind of get the gist. I'm not sure about learning how to draw per se through Photoshop. There's something to be said with the physicality of drawing. That said, I've been drawing all my life. I'm fairly confident with my drawing. So I would say, get some reference. I've not got anything to hand at the moment. If I just put in jug or vase, what about vase? Or if you're American, vase. Yep. So finding something like, I'm just going to copy that image and put it into Photoshop. So something like this, you know, I would suggest find a, if you're learning how to draw for the first time, find a real vase. If you've been drawing and if you've been using Photoshop but you just want to kind of brush up on your skills, then yeah, get an image, go into Google, get some images, and do some observational sort of drawing. So just kind of measure this stuff, just see how it kind of works. Use the opacity very low. I would say also just create some guidelines and just have a go at, you know, doing like for like. You can see what's going on there. So have a look at you know, drawing an ellipse, do the neck of the vase. Whenever you're doing observational drawing, it should always be 50% observation, 50% drawing. What does that mean? That means that you are constantly looking back and forth, okay? Back and forth with your drawing and looking at the vase. Okay, so back and forth, back and forth. This is how you should be working. Don't look at the vase there and go, right, got that, and then start drawing. You have to train your hand and your eye when you're drawing. Yeah. When I've taught students in the past, they tend to kind of look at something and they go, right, well, this is what I think it is, and then they just start drawing it, and they go off-piste, so to speak, and end up with something that doesn't look like the thing that they were originally intending to draw. Yeah, so always be looking back and forth. Now, I'm doing all this kind of very loosely at the moment. I'm not putting too much detail in, and as well, I'm sort of just I'm drawing it with this kind of white. I'm using the grey behind it to kind of create the sort of dark tones. I'm not using any black, but I'm just showing it as an example of what you can achieve by yeah, just using a bit of observation. So again, I'm sort of looking at these areas here and thinking, okay, now I've sort of done like a general shape, yeah, then start kind of coming in and saying, okay, there's a bit of a highlight there. And again, this tutorial is really for people who've already done some drawing. If you're completely fresh to drawing, as in you've never drawn before, I will be doing some tutorials hopefully in the future, like real basic, you know, going into the basics of drawing, looking at building drawings up from geometric shapes, possibly going into things like colour theory, how to mix colours, how to apply colours, so the real basics. But again, that'll be in the future. For the present, this is just kind of for you know, intermediary people who've kind of got some knowledge of drawing, but are just kind of wanting to kind of learn a little bit more and improve the skills. So yeah, so you know, keep it loose as well. Don't be too excuse me. Don't be too concerned about making things absolutely perfect. Keep things loose. So again, I'm just taking a very general view, just looking at some of these reflections going on in the vase, and just trying to emulate that, because this is all you're doing, of course. It's an emulation, it's a simulation or a synthesis. This is not obviously, you know, it's not real. So, but you're just giving an approximation of some kind of reality. So, you know, that'd do, that'd pass, right? You know, just doing something like that. If you had that in your sketchbook, you know, that'd be okay. Yeah, to do, you know, if you could sort of achieve something like that, it'll be fine. I would suggest, you know, even if you're intermediary, stick with basics. Okay, stick with basic shapes like this. Or for example, if I were to think about, I don't know, even something like apples. You know, find a picture of some apples, even something like that. Okay, and copy that into your page, and again have a go. Try it out. Remember, always, even this is the same with a physical drawing, always sketch light. So with this, obviously, you have to do it manually with the opacity, but you can sort of create that sort of sketch effect. And again, just think about your sort of parameters. Just so you kind of keep it in proportion. And yeah, I don't know what happened there. Yeah, and just sort of have a go at getting the basics in, right? I'm not starting to kind of draw details like this. I'm just getting the basics in. Could even up the opacity a little bit, and just generally kind of work on seeing where the light's coming. Yeah, you can see that there. Lights. It's a more of a general light, but you can see that hot spot there. So treat your own drawing the same way. Yeah. Again, I'm not using any darks or anything. I'm just using the background just to kind of for the sort of dark part of it. And again, using the smudge tool, I can sort of spread this out. My philosophy is this: if you can master stuff like this, if you can actually master drawing real basics like this, then you can master the rest of it. It's the same thing in anything. You know, I teach game design, and I see students like creating work in Maya and stuff like in the past. You know, creating stuff in Maya and perhaps trying to get too complex, or even lighting. You know, lighting scenes within Maya, and trying things that are too complex. And I'd always say, just keep the basics. Stick to master that. You know, there's a lot to be said by keeping things basic and mastering those basic things, because once you can do that, you can do the rest. Trying to run before you walk, or trying to do trying to do the sort of 100 meters without learning to walk is can sometimes you can kind of get some results, but they won't be fully realized. Whereas if you go from the basics like this, you'll learn a lot more. You'll learn the foundations really of drawing. And also another thing as well is that even if you've got some skill with drawing, and I'll tell you this in my 40 plus years, I've been drawing all my life, and I'm still finding things out about drawing. So you never stop learning, folks. Never stop learning. Same with anything. So always stay open to learning new things, and not settling down too much. Always kind of keep exploring, keep inquiring with your drawing. Find some things out. You might sort of develop your style after a while, but try new things. That's where growth takes place, and that's where you learn, where you get more skills. If you start sticking to the same formula, your work can kind of start to look a little bit tired. You're not really finding out really what your true potential is. So So again, I'm just sort of putting some details in there, and yeah, just trying some things out. Again, just keeping it sort of fairly loose. I'm not using, of course, any blacks or anything like that. Okay, so this is, imagine I was sort of drawing on a chalkboard. This is the kind of approach. So imagine you're in class and I'm drawing on a chalkboard. If indeed they still have chalkboards. I come from a generation where they used to have chalkboards, and now it's of course I use video screens now, of course. So I'm not sure if chalkboards are actually extinct now. They may well be. So yeah, so imagine that I'm drawing in chalk, and yeah, just putting some, you see there's also just little things that can bring your drawings to life. Where this is on a white background, you can see just a little bit of the white reflected on there. So again, you don't have to kind of go overboard, but just kind of put a little kind of suggestion in at the bottom there, and it can just bring things to life. Yeah, just make it sort of pop. So short tutorial today, just a few key things then, just to sort of as a sort of takeaway, just something to be aware of, or should I say, as a recap. So first of all, try brushes. That was the first thing, wasn't it? Try brushes. I must do something about this pen. I don't know why it's doing this weird thing. Secondly is observe. Now, can anyone remember what I said? What's the percentage with observation? Quick test. See if you remember. Can you remember? Okay. I'll tell you, in case you can't. It's 50-50, isn't it? 50-50. 50% observation, 50% drawing. Yeah. Very, very important. And yeah, lastly, just kind of keep everything loose. So keep loose. So don't commit too much to putting detail in. Always go from the general to the specific. Yeah, just always as a general rule for any, whatever you're doing, always general to specific. If you can read that handwriting. It's not my best writing. There's something funny going on with this brush, but anyway. Again, these are the wonders of live recordings. So yeah, so there we are. Hopefully that's been helpful for you. I will be doing some more tutorials going into the basics of drawing, both from beginner and intermediate stage, and yeah, it'll form part of this kind of series, and hopefully you'll be able to just dip into them. So they're not necessarily going to be chronological. You'll be able to sort of dip into them, as and when. Hopefully that's been helpful for you. Feel free to drop comments in the section below. Other than that, thanks for watching, and see you next time. Okay, thanks.